Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here on this Tuesday. I didn't do an episode yesterday because I have been eyeball deep in documents about the Ellen Greenberg case. Just an unbelievable case. We're going to do a deep dive into these documents. We're going to jump right in now. Music fact of the day, biggest one-hit wonder from the 70s. Play That Funky Music by Wild Cherry. That came out in 1976, the year before I was born. I have to give a huge shout out to Gavin Fish for his amazing work on getting all these documents and thoroughly covering this case with integrity and determination to get justice for Ellen. Also, a big shout out to Joel from STS Podcast. Both Gavin and Joel have been so helpful in filling in some gaps or things that I didn't quite understand or needed clarification on. They jumped in, was messaging me back pretty much instantly. It took all day yesterday to really get a good grip on this case. I'd heard about it. I've seen the graphics that have the knives going in, showing where Ellen was stabbed. Just did not know really the injustice that was taking place and has taken place since her murder in 2011. And I will say murder, that's my opinion. I don't think that I've had anybody who has followed this case say to me, yeah, it was a suicide. In fact, last night I was out on my screened-in porch. I have found that is my favorite office. So I take my laptop and my iPad out there and do my work. And my 12-year-old, Sarah Rose, was watching The Haunted Mansion, the new version. And I had my headphones on and I was listening to some things. And I found one of the graphics that's just kind of a silhouette. It's not the more graphic one that's out there. And it just shows kind of a figure. And then it shows the entry wounds for the knives, and the knives are represented. She lives with a true crime podcaster. This is not anything new for her to come in my studio. What are you working on? What are you doing? She's very curious. So I show her the photo and I say, what do you think happened to this woman? Within a half a second, she says, well, somebody stabbed her to death. And I said, what would you say if I said that the authorities in charge of the investigation and the medical examiner and everybody that had any pull in this case said it was a suicide? Her mouth flew wide open and she said, Mom, I'm 12. Even I can see there's no way that's a suicide. A few years ago, I learned a really hard lesson about working with glass that is broken. I was cleaning out some stuff and I broke a picture frame. So I just threw the broken glass into the garbage bag. Well, when I went to go tie up the garbage bag when I was finished, big piece of glass went straight through my wrist, nearly coming out the other side. Now, luckily, I didn't hit anything important, but dummy me pulls the glass out instead of just going to the ER with it in there to make sure I didn't hit an artery. So I pull the glass out and I'm profusely bleeding. My kids were in the room, as well as one of their friends who I thought was going to pass out at the site. But immediately the pain was overwhelming. Now, I've given birth to one of my kids without anesthesia. I've broken bones. And I have to say that glass going through my wrist was probably the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. The burning sensation, I can still feel it. To think that they are peddling this idea that she killed herself, 20 stab wounds front and back, I'm double jointed. So I did a little experiment. And I just tried to reach the places where she was stabbed in her back and also the top of her head. There's no way. Then you figure in at some point, she had several injuries that were life-threatening. You have medical symptoms that start pretty much immediately. Blood filling the chest cavity. Your breathing is labored. How is she going to have enough force to inflict some of these wounds that clearly came after the first wound that would have been fatal? It stinks to high heaven. I'm not going to sit here and name suspects or who I think did it. I have my own opinions, but I always go by the rule of if law enforcement hasn't publicly named somebody, I'm not going to name them. I don't want to get sued, number one, right? The other question that I have is if she is repeatedly stabbing herself, would that knife not be wet from the blood? What happens? We know this. We've covered murder cases where there's been stabbings, and what happens when you find the assailant? 9 times out of 10, unless they wore gloves, they got cuts on their hands because that knife slips. Think about doing it this way. This is a steak knife. It doesn't have a stopper. As far as I can tell, there were no cuts on her hands. None of it makes sense. What little I've seen of the crime scene, I've seen a couple of photos. There's a little bit of blood, but the wound to her scalp, that was huge. And I'm not going to show these photos because they're very graphic. People are sensitive to seeing those things. You can seek it out if you want. Gavin Fish, go to his website. He has them there. And then I got to thinking about the inmate who escaped and was recently caught. If you remember, he was on the run in the woods. The canine got him and nicked his scalp. Well, that first picture we see of him, his face is drenched in blood, just drenched from a little nick. She had a huge gash. The lack of blood at that crime scene is something I don't understand at all. Those are questions I have, but let's get into it. Who was Ellen Greenberg? 27 years old at her time of death, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was killed on January 26, 2011. She was a first grade school teacher. She sustained 20 stab wounds and had various bruises on her upper and lower extremities in different stages of resolution. What I noticed about that is that these bruises seem to be in places where clothing would cover those bruises. I think it's suspicious with that many bruises on your body in various degrees of healing. So you can see where my thought process is. What happened? So January 28th, 2 days after she died, the Philadelphia police announced that Ellen's death was a homicide. And then they backed off, saying that the death had not been ruled a homicide, but it was considered suspicious. We're going to get into the medical examiner later. That's a whole can of worms right there, y'all. February 18th of 2011, Philadelphia police retracted their original ruling and officially declared Ellen's death a suicide. Philadelphia City Assistant Medical Examiner Marlon Osborne listed multiple stab wounds as the cause of death and the manner suicide. By the way, this guy was reprimanded in a big way for pretty much being sloppy with his work, to which later on, when he did a deposition for this case, he said he had never been reprimanded. We're going to get there probably tomorrow on that. Now, Ellen's parents and friends were on a show on Oxygen called Accident, Suicide, or Murder in an episode called Behind the Locked Door. I'm going to put a link in the description to this episode. You have to link your TV provider for that, or if you have an NBC Peacock profile, you have so many credits, you might be able to watch the episode. But I want to talk a little bit about who Ellen was. She is the only child of Dr. Josh Greenberg and Sandy. And I say is because for me, when you have a child, you will always have a child, even if that child passes away before you. I never like to say she was the daughter. Ellen is and will always be the daughter of Dr. Josh Greenberg and Sandy. Ellen's mom said that she was joyful, loving, warm, social. She liked to cook. In fact, there was some fruit on the counter that was cut when her body was found. Doesn't sound like somebody that was going to kill themselves. She loved fashion. She was a daddy's girl, and her dad liked watching sports together, going to sports, football, baseball games. Ellen went to college at Penn State, and her roommate and friend, Alicia, I hope I'm saying that right. I don't know if it's Alicia or Alicia, said they became instant friends the first day. And she said Ellen just lit up a room when she walked in with her huge and infectious smile. That was the first thing that stood out to me when I was Googling pictures of her, was this bright white, genuine, warm smile that Ellen had. Just a beautiful woman. And Ellen loved children. And it was not a surprise to anybody when she decided she wanted to go into education. And she was a first grade teacher. Her friend Erica said that Ellen would tell her funny stories all the time about things the little boys in first grade would say. And I've worked in the education system at all three different levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And man, you do have some stories for sure. And you do have some stress. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Ellen and her fiance, Sam, were set up on a blind date by a mutual friend. Everyone said that Ellen was head over heels in love with Sam. And her friend from college said she doesn't remember there even being that awkward dating stage between the two of them. They just fell into being an awesome couple. Ellen's mom also said that Sam was very charming, and it was wonderful to see your child happy. After 3 years of dating, they were engaged. He popped the question on the last day of their vacation in California. They were on some rocks right by the ocean. And her Aunt Debbie, who was also on this Oxygen special, said that Ellen sent them a photo of the ring. I have that up on the screen right now. probably the photo. It wasn't confirmed this is the actual photo. And also, just before Ellen was killed, she had sent out the save the date invitations for the wedding. All things that are an indication that she was not planning to end her life. Another thing that I thought about too is in order to endure the pain of 20 stab wounds that you supposedly are inflicting on yourself, I think one or two things have to be at play. Either you have to be under the influence of something really, really heavy that just numbs your pain, or you have to be in some sort of a psychotic episode, which there was no indication of that the last time Sam saw her when he went to go work out at the gym. But let's move to the day she was murdered, January 26th of 2011. There was a big nor'easter that was heading towards Philadelphia. So in response, schools let out early. Ellen stops to put gas in her car at 1:26 p.m. and then she goes back home to the apartment that she shared with her fiance Sam. At 2:30 p.m., Ellen calls a restaurant and we don't know what that call was about. At 2:33, Ellen calls a number that is redacted and the call lasts for 30 seconds. 3:47 p.m., the final text was sent from Ellen's phone to a number that was programmed in her phone. It does not say what number that was. 4:46 p.m. was the last use of her laptop. At 4:50, Sam leaves the apartment to go to the gym that's located on the first floor of their apartment complex. He is seen leaving on surveillance at 5:26 p.m. When he gets back to the apartment door, he puts his key in. The swing lock was still engaged from the inside. It's kind of the long one. You have them a lot in hotels. It kind of has a ball in the end. So Sam tries to call Ellen. He tries calling her between 5:30 and 5:42 p.m., then again at 6:07 through 6:10. He also sends her texts. The incoming texts from Sam begin at 5:32 and end at 5:54. The first text says, hello. Second text, open the door. Third text, what are you doing? Fourth text, I'm getting pissed. Fifth text, hello. Sixth text, you better have an excuse. Seventh text, WTF. Eighth text, Ninth text, you have no idea. Sam spoke to two people before calling 911. I believe his name is Kamian Schwartzman. Not sure if I pronounced that first name right. And also his uncle James Schwartzman. Both of those are attorneys. James is married to Sam's mom's sister. That's how they're related. I was reading on Gavin Fish's website in a demand for a retraction letter that was sent to Gavin that Sam did call them to say he was locked out of his apartment and Ellen wasn't responding to his calls and texts, and the call was put on speakerphone so they both could hear. The letter that was sent to Gavin said that they were on the phone with Sam when he forced entry into the apartment. They heard him scream hysterically, and then they told him to call 911. At 6:31 p.m., Sam calls 911. So what we're going to do now is listen to this 911 call. It's a little over 5 minutes, but we are going to listen because it is a big part of this story, I think.
I need everything out. I just walked into my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come help now.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no! It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell.
So you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie.
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell where the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, But it's everywhere.
Okay,
it's everywhere.
She might have fallen. Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone.
Fire Department 842. What's the address? No,
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please hurry.
4601 Flat Rock.
Yes.
What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back, so I bring her.
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay, do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay, I can tell you what to do, okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her flat on her.
God.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off. Okay? Kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Allie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
Okay, I'm trying not to. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God. She stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell in a knife. Oh, no. Her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her here now. I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator? 277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Wait, so what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
Was it her chest or what area?
It's in her chest. It looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there. Okay, just get.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Okay,
how old is she?
She's 27.
27, and there's no sign of life at all.
No, please don't be. What?
Pinch her under her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
She's Ellie. She's not. Her arm and her hands are still warm. I don't know what that means, but there's blood everywhere. I mean.
I know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything.
Yeah, don't touch anything. Okay.
I'm not touching anything. I can't believe this though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door. You said latched it shut.
No. I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched.
Oh.
Like it was, it wasn't like it was, it was like locked from the inside. And I'm yelling, so I'm
Was
yelling
your house
and
broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 4601 Flat Rock, and this is a house, right?
It's an apartment. Flat Rock apartment.
Okay, that'll help.
Oh my God. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Okay, so I got that 911 call from Gavin Fish's content. One thing to note in that 911 call is Sam says that she is on her back, which does not match when first responders get there. Gavin Fish has a video interviewing Tom Brennan, who was hired by Ellen's parents to investigate the case. He's been involved in over 800 homicides. I love watching this guy. He knows his stuff. And he kind of expands on the timeline with Gavin as far as what happened and filled in some gaps that the documents don't elaborate on. At 6:33 p.m., first responders are dispatched. The EMS and the firemen get to the scene. It was suggested they wait for uniformed officers to get there, but EMS says, let's go in. Gavin is seen sitting in the hall, and first responders walk in and they see Ellen. She was pronounced at 6:40 p.m. Ellen was found kind of in a sitting position with her back to the cabinets and her legs out. That's not on your back. The other thing of note is that she had dried and coagulated blood going from her nose to her ear. Now, even if your head is tilted down or something, which maybe it was because when you die, you lose all muscle control, obviously, and your head might go to the front or go to the side. I even tried this today. I was doing little experiments here. I got some Halloween blood that we have around the house, and I put it here, and I tilted my head, and it still went at an angle, but it dripped onto my shirt. For blood to go from here to here, from nose to ear, what does that indicate? I mean, to me, it makes me think her body was moved. And where she was, it just didn't look natural. Once the officers arrived to secure the scene, the property manager takes them upstairs to the apartment. As the EMS lieutenant was leaving, he said to the concierge of the apartment, according to Mr. Brenner, "You've got a murder upstairs." The fireman on scene told his lieutenant they better get back to the station because homicide would likely want to interview them since they were first on scene. But guess what? They were never interviewed. They found her first. Those are the people you talk to after you talk to the person closest to her. You talk to the people that found her. Never interviewed. Police secure the scene, and the property manager and concierge says an officer that was dressed in kind of SWAT gear showed the two of them a photo of Ellen's body that he had taken on his cell phone. Big no-no. We went through this with Kobe Bryant. Remember, there was a huge lawsuit that Vanessa Bryant won because you had a first responder that took photos of the victims and was showing them to other people. After seeing the photo, the concierge, by the way, had to go to therapy. Sam was reportedly transported to headquarters for an interview. It's not known what happened in that interview. As Tom Brenner says, they have not been able to get their police reports. In Pennsylvania, it's not given to the public. It seems to me that on scene, they just chalked this up to a suicide, and I don't understand how. It seems to me that the door being latched from the inside was part of the reason. And also, this apartment was on the 6th floor. It had been snowing. There's a little balcony. The snow was undisturbed. But still, you have a woman that has a knife in her chest. By the way, no official crime scene photos were taken by the Philadelphia police. The medical examiner's investigator did come to take photos, but the police department did not. It wasn't until the next day, on the 27th, that initially Dr. Osborne ruled this a homicide, that it became a crime scene. When Sam was taken to headquarters for his interview, Tom Brenner said supposedly Sam had an attorney there with him, but it was not his family. It was independent counsel. Mr. Brenner says Sam was not drug tested and there was no DNA swabs taken. Ellen's body was not taken from the apartment until the early morning hours of the 27th, maybe between 2 and 3 a.m. The medical examiner's investigator stayed on scene with Ellen's body to be sure that knife was not removed from her chest. And also, that investigator accompanied her body to the medical examiner's office. Ellen's parents talk about getting a call from Sam that something terrible had happened to Ellen. They were told there was no need for an ambulance because she was dead. Now, her parents lived in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Sam and Ellen lived in Philadelphia. And what was going on? The nor'easter. They were snowed in. I can't imagine how helpless they felt in that moment. So all they could do really was wait for just more information to come through. Her mom said on the Oxygen special that at that moment, her world went dark and she has no daughter. Her mother told Dateline that when they got the call of Ellen's death, the idea of suicide never crossed their minds once. So let's go through the investigative report from the medical examiner. This report was done on April 15th of 2011. That's nearly 3 months later, if I'm looking at the dates right. So it says Detective Sierra of Homicide called to report Ellen's death. The officer arrived on the scene at 8:27 p.m. and Samuel Goldberg and his family and some friends were also present. Sam says he left Ellen at 4:45 to go to the gym and returned between 5:15 and 5:30. He was unable to get into the apartment. He opened the door with his key, but the door was secure from the inside. He tried texting, calling, and emailing Ellen for an hour and then forced entry into the apartment with someone from the security department present as he did that. He called 911 at 6:33. He was instructed to try CPR until he noticed a knife in her chest and was told to stop. EMS responded. She was pronounced deceased at 6:40 p.m. The unit was on the 6th floor. It's noted that the apartment was well kept and clean. The lock was busted due to Sam forcing entry, and there was no sign of struggle in the apartment. Also, nothing of value was missing. There was money, there were keys, 3 laptops. There was 1 laptop on the island in the kitchen that belonged to Sam, 1 in the master bathroom that had Ellen's wedding things on it. The 3rd was Ellen's work computer, which had teaching materials on it. There was no suicide note left or anything that would indicate that she was planning to harm herself. The incident occurred during a snowstorm. The outside patio had snow on it and there were no footprints, and the snow was completely undisturbed. They found prescription meds on a bedstand in the master bedroom. 2 were for anxiety and 1 for sleeping. Probably 75% of Americans take something for anxiety and for sleeping. It's not uncommon. I don't know if this factored into their suicide theory or not. It doesn't sound like Ellen had any major psychological issues. Being a teacher is stressful. She is planning a wedding. She had grades that were due. A lot of things. I'm going to tell you, I've worked in education and I have seen teachers absolutely maxed out. It is a long day when you have kids that might not be behaving. And then you look at everything going on in her life. The wedding of her dreams is coming up. So it's pressure. It's exciting, but it's pressure. Absolutely makes sense that maybe she was on a couple of medications for anxiety, as a lot of us are. She had a journal where she would list her medications and her state of mind while taking the meds. It was dated on January 16th, which was 10 days before her death. Her cell phone was found in the master bathroom. Ellen was found on the hardwood kitchen floor just inside the door entrance. She was found with some of her upper body and shoulders resting against the lower half of the white kitchen cabinets next to the range. And remember, Sam says on the 911 call, she's on her back. She was wearing a zipper up dark shirt over a t-shirt, gray sweatpants, and light brown Ugg boots. A pair of eyeglasses were lying next to her. She was grasping a white towel in her left hand. I've seen a picture of that. It didn't look like there was any blood on it. How do you stab yourself that many times and die with it in your hand and there's no blood on it? She also had a scrunchie on her right wrist. There was a kitchen knife embedded in her chest through her clothing. There were multiple stab wounds observed at the scene. At the chest where the knife is located, a few superficial wounds grouped nearby, one to the upper left chest near the clavicle, at the mid chest between and just below the breasts. With all those stab wounds, to just write this off as a suicide on scene and not secure that scene and not do any kind of forensics on that property, it's mind-blowing, y'all. The shirt had defects consistent with the underlying wounds. There are no defense injuries to the hands, wrists, or forearms. The right hand is closed in a loose fist. I have read something that contradicts the no defensive wound theory, but there was nothing official in the reports about that. The extremities were cold to the touch, but the torso, front and back, was warm. Lividity was inconspicuous, and the findings were consistent with the position of her body. Blood was present on the head, the neck, and in her hair. The right hand has blood on it. There was also blood on the front side of her shirt, along her pants on the front side, and also on the top of both of her boots. The right boot had blood on the sole. The blood around her was generally confined to the area of her body, which was on the floor underneath and on the face of the cabinets behind her. There was one small blood spatter on the cabinet to the left of her body. Two separate blood spatters are on the granite countertop just above her. Two kitchen knives were seen in the sink adjacent to the body, and they are free from any blood or tissue. A knife block is on the counter between the sink and the stove. The sink underneath is dry and there's no blood or tissue present. The knife that was embedded in her chest is consistent with the knife set found in the sink and in the knife block. Neighbors did not report hearing anything loud or any kind of arguments taking place. Ellen's parents were interviewed on January 27th, the day after, at 7:41 a.m. They identified Ellen over the phone. Her mom said she last talked to Ellen the same day at 7 a.m. when they both were on their way to work. She said the conversation was pleasant, gave no indication anything was imminently wrong. But her mom told investigators Ellen had been battling anxiety issues since the end of the last year. Her mom said she was struggling with something, and her mom urged her to seek help. She was seeing a mental health professional. Ellen was described as anxious, insecure, not sure of herself, and not liking how she felt. That was not normal for her life, just in totality. We all go through rough patches. They're tough, they're dark. But it wasn't like this was a consistent problem with Ellen throughout her childhood, teenage years, or adult life. She said she was overwhelmed with classroom work as a teacher in the school district of Philadelphia. She had been employed at the school, by the way, for 3 years. And just to further my theory that this was not a suicide, she had just recently gotten her master's degree in education and a certification in reading specialty. She had plans. It makes no sense. She was in a committed relationship with Sam and had been with him for 3 years. They had gotten engaged over that past summer. Her parents had no reservations about Ellen and Sam's relationship and said Sam was a fine young man. They were happy to welcome into the family as their son-in-law. They had no knowledge of any physical or verbal abuse between the two of them. And her parents say they had no knowledge of any thoughts of self harm or any ideations by Ellen. Even with her anxiety issues, this was a surprise to them. Her psychiatrist was interviewed over the phone and she was very upset after being notified of Ellen's death. Ellen was a new patient and she'd only seen her 3 times: January the 12th, January the 17th, and January the 19th. She said Ellen was having difficulty with work and felt overwhelmed and pressured, which is very normal for people in education or really in any job. You always get overwhelmed. Ellen mentioned she was doing well, but the school district had recently changed some regulations. That's always stressful for teachers. She was also having issues with some difficult students. Ellen wasn't sure if she was going to stay with her job or just work through it. Her doctor was in the process of completing a treatment plan, and her doctor was also in contact with Ellen's mother, who had called to express concerns that she had for Ellen. Her doctor said Ellen had nothing but good things to say about Sam and that they were getting married and that he was wonderful. Her doctor said that when she would talk about Sam, she would smile. She also denied any abuse at the hands of Sam to the doctor. Ellen was given medication, although she was hesitant at first to take it. So the next day after her death, January 27th, Sam's uncle, James Schwartzman, contacts Melissa, the property manager, and asks if she can help him get into the apartment to get a suit for Sam to wear to Ellen's funeral, as well as photographs that they wanted to use. Melissa called the police to ask if it was okay, and the police told her the scene had been released, there were no restrictions, and that he was free to go in and get those things. She asked about cleaning up the crime scene, and police told her that was not their responsibility. They suggested that she hire a professional crime scene cleanup company to come in and clean the apartment. She asked for referrals, and they gave her the name of a company. She then told Sam's uncle details of the cleanup cost and the time frame it would take, and he approved that. This is where Melissa's really smart. All right, props to Melissa, because she arranged and was present for a video being taken of the unit before the cleanup to preserve a record of the condition of the apartment and the contents before anyone entered, just to protect the company in the event of any kind of damage or theft. Now, Gavin said in a video a year ago, that very video that Melissa took is unaccounted for. And from what I understand, it still is. Isn't that convenient? When the company arrived to clean, she let them into the unit. And after the cleanup was done, she contacted James Schwartzman and said, you can now go in and get the personal items. 2 men arrived, one of the men she believed to be James, and she stayed while they retrieved those items from the apartment. The attorney for Ellen's parents told Fox News Digital that items that were taken out of the apartment included Ellen's purse, 3 laptops, and 2 cell phones. Melissa later learned that Ellen's death had been ruled a homicide. This day on the 27th was the day that the autopsy was performed. We're going to do that next episode, but ultimately he tentatively deemed it a homicide, and then things changed. Joseph Scott Morgan has an excellent episode on body bags about this case. I'm linking that in the description. If you have not listened to it, please do, because he really explains the physical side of what Ellen would have been experiencing with these various stab wounds, and also just how odd this all is. He actually recorded this episode live at CrimeCon with Jackie Howard, who is the executive producer for Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Mr. Morgan said he's never seen a case with this many stab wounds and so many unanswered questions, and he's never worked a case with this many self-inflicted stab wounds. He talks about how is it possible that you not only have stab wounds on the chest, but also in the back. The knife had actually penetrated and touched the spinal column at the C1 and C2 level. He said this is almost an unimaginable feat. The C1 and the C2 vertebrae, the brainstem comes down those. Well, the brainstem is what keeps us breathing. It keeps our heart beating. It is vital and essential for life. In addition to the stab wounds on her chest and her back, she had a huge wound on the top of her head. It wasn't midline. It was just a little bit to the side, but it was large and it was deep. You can't imagine the pain that would come from that. At what point is she unable to exert the force needed to either hit the spinal column or to go through bone? in her head. I don't think it's possible. It doesn't make any sense that she was able to inflict these very fatal wounds, because when you do one fatal wound, your body is starting to get weaker by the second. This is extreme force that had to be applied. Mr. Morgan also points out in the medical examiner report several vital areas were hit that would 100% lead to her death. He explains that her lungs would be filling with blood with one of the chest wounds. She would not be breathing easily. It would be a struggle to breathe. Also, the sac that surrounds your heart, it fills with blood, which causes the heart to not pump efficiently. Your heart's struggling. Well, who else is struggling? Ellen. Ellen is struggling. How does she have the strength to get these wounds as deep as they were? With the wound on her head, it's going to cause a brain bleed, which causes pressure on the brain. I mean, make it make sense, y'all. The other thing that will blow your mind, and this is where we're going to end it today. A pathologist from the same medical examiner's office who did the autopsy said in a deposition, the neck injury involving the spine, her opinion was that injury had no bleeding, which would indicate what? That wound was inflicted post-mortem after Ellen's heart had stopped beating. But we're still at suicide, right? Yeah, that's where we are today. This story has so many different layers to it. And her parents have not stopped advocating and fighting for their daughter since 2011. They just recently had the door slammed in their face again. I'm happy that a lot of people are picking this story up, because sometimes that's what it takes, is a group of people demanding something. It's easy for this to go away. It's easy to just keep denying her parents the right to have this ruled even as undetermined, so that it could be reinvestigated or ruled back to homicide. We got to make noise, y'all, for Ellen, for her parents who have not given up one bit. I'm sure they have been just devastated at times when the door's been shut. But even the last ruling that we will get to later, when we're kind of at the end of this series, they're still not giving up. We're going to join them in that fight. We're going to make noise. We're going to demand justice for Ellen. All right, guys, tomorrow we are going to go through the autopsy with the medical examiner, Marlon Osborne. And we're going to go through that and see what his findings were. And then we're going to read his reprimand that happened the next year due to his incomplete and sloppy work and way overdue reports that even resulted in family members calling and asking, hey, what was the official cause and manner of death with my loved one? By the way, in the deposition he gave for this case, as I said in the beginning, he said he never had been reprimanded. It was pretty scathing. We're going to read that tomorrow. All right, guys. I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. We'll see you soon.